Morality. Tonight, we discuss the latest episode of Tulsa King, then we talk the conclusion of Peripheral, and we'll take a look back at Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, 21 years later. All this coming up right now on The Writer Brothers! And welcome back once again to your Tuesday night home for Tulsa King. This will be the last week for the Peripheral for a while. And of course, our look back at Lord of the Rings just over and under 20 years later. Gentlemen, what a week it's been. How are we all doing? Are we ready to discuss some pop culture tonight or what?
Oh,
Dude,
yeah.
I want to open with how pissed I am at Call of Duty.
Oh,
like,
okay.
Why didn't Warzone 2 port over all the skins I paid for and earned? Like, you literally only ported over my currency.
It's
really,
real simple.
Really pissed me off this month.
It's real simple because you're not playing Warhammer 40k Darktide, and Darktide is where all of you should be. It's that good.
Fair enough.
Sorry, you misspoke SWOTOR. I love SWOTOR. But anyway, Arende writes in, Good evening, Arende. Glad you were able to make it. It's good to see you at the start of the episode. Not that that's required, but I know it was a big deal for you to be here, and I'm glad you made it. Yeah, so this week, boy, what a week for shows. We'll of course start with Tulsa King. Not a lot to discuss there plot wise or super in depth, but definitely a lot of plot points that did happen with a lot of excitement. So Corione, you want to give the quick rundown for this quick episode?
Oh, for Tulsa King, sure.
Yeah.
So we saw previously that Stallone's character was getting ready to horn in on the nitrous oxide market by selling balloons at a local festival. Well, it turns out the local biker gang claims dominion over such parties and was annoyed at them getting in on their turf. On top of that, tensions at the young driver's house are boiling over as they start to realize, yeah, he might be mobbed up now. And finally, we have, Stallone's younger brother in the show is dying of cancer. And it's giving him an opportunity to reconnect with some of his younger family, with some of his family back in New York. Additionally, we had the fun party of Stallone's character finally tracking down the guy who tried to shoot him last episode and making it very clear, no, now you work for me because you don't get to leave the mob. You get to stay and and stay in your lane. So there was a lot of cool stuff that kind of went down in this one, but it really felt like a continuation of the last episode. The way I like to describe it is, this is by far the least mind-blowing episode of Tulsa King yet, and yet it's still super good. If only for the fight scene where the entire time Stallone's character has been telling everyone, no, we're not going to fight the bikers. We're just going to have a nice, calm, rational discussion and get this dealt with. And then upon realizing he had a far larger team at his disposal than he thought he was going to be, he kind of decides, yeah, you know what? Let's beat the hell out of them. And beat the hell out of them they did. In what I think was probably the best choreographed fight of just like baseball bats on surprised bikers I have seen all year.
Yeah, I was very impressed with how that fight scene played out. I didn't feel lost at any point, and it didn't feel too jarring. We're not relying on the shaky cam to do our storytelling for us. Instead, sorry, we had a very negative J.J. Abrams discussion at work today, so might make it a few quips. Instead, we had a really good, just straightforward, balls to the wall, fists on fists or bats on fists action. The kind of stuff that, you think you want to be a part of, but really you're just happy to be sitting curled up in your bed in your jammies watching through a screen. So, but no, it was a great fight. It was a lot of unexpecteds that happened. I didn't think Dwight's father was actually going to go with him, as a kind of a sort of show of, well, here I'm going to go with you on this, and then after that, you need to start making a choice.
Dwight Stallone's
character. Or Dwight Stallone's character. Dang it, I got him confused with the kid again. Forgot what's the kid's name? I should just keep the IMDb up for this stuff. But yeah, it was an interesting episode. I'm curious to see what happens in the next one, to see how some of these stories. Looks like Dwight Stallone's character is going to be pulled away for a bit, and oh, right. You guys don't like to do the next time on. Sorry, my mistake.
No, it's all right. It's all right.
Well, actually, this one's next time. It didn't feel like this is what's going to happen all next week. It kind of felt more of one of those halfway through the season.
Tyson.
Huh? Tyson. That's right. Tyson's dad gets in on the fight.
Like one of the Supernatural halfway through the seasons.
Right. Well, yeah, like coming up on the rest of the season. Those. But I don't know.
And I also feel like it's a logical progression that, the bikers are obviously going to strike back for this. There's going to be reprisal. This is not going away.
No.
Well, if anything, I missed this episode, unfortunately, but the way you guys are describing it is like, finally, we're seeing why the mob, A, saw potential, and B, is like sending Tulsa somebody that's a heavy hitter. Like, one of the things that Stallone's character hasn't lost is being a really hardcore like mafioso. He's not just like the kind of guy that has gotten soft with the times, because like he didn't even know about phones when he was asking Tyson for a device that could search anything he wanted in the first episode. And now like we finally see the other gang, like the other part, the opposite of the mob. And like the police aren't the opposite of the mob. The opposite of the mob is like the American version of the Italian version.
Well, I mean, from the episode, you get the impression that the guy who's running the bikers, it has definitely got an Irish mob mentality to him as well. So we'll see how this all goes down, but it definitely feels like one of the people is going to be sent to the hospital, and the response is going to be somebody's getting sent to the morgue.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting to watch, to see how quickly they how quickly they fought the bikers, and then to think kind of in the back of my mind going, man, what's the response to this going to even be like? Like, I'm a little scared right now because bikers, I mean, granted, these guys seem like, fanboy Hell's Angels or fanboy Sons of Anarchy. I mean, that's how they come off. I don't think they're genuine, hard shit at all, by any stretch. But I don't know, because as I'm watching the fight, I'm thinking, well, the whole reason that Stallone's character ended up behind bars for 25 years was because he took the fall for somebody else murdering. So that tells me that in these kinds of engagements in the real world, which kind of seems like what this show's trying to go for, not like Sopranos, oh, we could just kill 30 people and we're fine because we have plot armor. It seems like they're really trying to not cause you to reach down for your suspension of disbelief. That they're trying to make this a believable story. And so that's why, instead of like swords and guns, they bring bats to just beat them up. So it seems like when you decide to actually kill somebody in this particular universe, it's kind of treated the same as it would be in real life, in that that's not a risk you take unless it's like absolutely necessary. And with it being 2022, it's almost impossible these days to get away with murder, especially in public like that. So
well, that's why the ATF agent is going to be an interesting player in this very, very shortly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think we are getting to the point where, at this point, I feel like the players have been firmly established. We know what everybody's stakes and things are now. Now it's going to turn into what this show is actually going to be about.
Yeah, that's kind of my impressions as well at this point, is that we are now, that this was, we talked about a little earlier, this was like not really a progression of major plot points, but there were still some important things that happened, and it was just kind of, it was a filler episode that didn't quite feel totally like a filler episode. So that's my thoughts on it. But overall, I thought it was pretty good. But I think since we got a lot to discuss about with the Peripheral, unless there's any final thoughts here, I think it's probably time to move
let's
on.
go.
If I can get everything.
So, fan mail from Randy. Meh. I prefer Valheim Mistlands. Mistlands looks so good. Yeah, I've got to decide to boil down at some point and get back into Valheim and build up from scratch. Last time I played, the planes were brand new, and we just finally got like the cold mechanics of the mountains really squared away. So I think it's time I venture back into the realm of Valheim. I just need a couple of good Vikings to go with me and sing glorious songs as we beat the hell out of some trolls.
Yeah, that sounds like something we should do for a casual filth. Probably eventually. when we all can.
One day when I get a computer.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to wait till spring.
When the console gamer finally ascends,
yes, to join the master race. The PC
my coming
master
of
race.
age is coming.
I know. You'll finally be on a grown-up console after, so many years. I'm proud of you. Well, I will be. Right now, I'm just still disappointed, like our dad is disappointed in both of us. Anyway.
As he should be.
Yeah. The Peripheral. I called it. I knew that I had a feeling that we were going to get a cliffhanger ending. That seems to be the trend this year. That seems to be the way that serialized shows are going, is they're just going to assume that if people like it enough, then they'll watch it. And if not, then nobody gets an ending, which, this day and age, I kind of can't doubt the strategy anymore, because maybe 5 or 6 years ago, yeah, ending a cliffhanger would be a bit of a risk-taking maneuver.
Season 2 or 3 maneuver.
But we're at the point now where everyone basically expects shows in the form of giant movies, and if you're going to do a show in a giant movie format like this, then you might as well just go for broke. But I'm pretty sure we are going to see a Peripheral season 2. I mean, I thought this show was fantastic. Huge I don't know where I'm going with that thought. I wanted to say really good, really high standards for sci-fi.
Yeah, and I was actually going to say there are some very powerful people in the background pulling for this show. So with any luck, we're going to get a second season.
Hopefully. And I would also go so far as to say you're slightly off, Parker, because this is one of the shows where it wrapped up the timeline. Like, with the removal of Flynn in the timeline, now the whole story is different in season 2. So it did finish season 1, cleaned that whole card so season 2 can start fresh, except for 2109 or 2100. And I think that's the wild part about the whole twist for this episode. Is as it was finishing and drawing to an end, I was just so nervous for the cliffhanger to come, but it was like a double entendre cliffhanger, and I have to go back and rewatch. But I don't know if you guys noticed, there's end credit scenes.
Oh,
yeah.
I mean, the only thing I stayed for was the next time on the Peripheral, but.
Oh, so there was. I don't know if there was a next time on the Peripheral for every episode. I didn't, because I always get worried about that. But this episode, it ended with a whole extra 5 minutes. I was watching like the credits, and it was like 5. I noticed it was way too long for the credits to start, because I was about to turn it off, and then like I was just skipped to the scene, and it's a whole end with Lev, the klept dude, meeting his bosses, and it turns out that the klept is Russian mob.
Yeah.
And that was like the tease for season 2, but also just this whole, like I said, just a clean, this season is done. Everybody you met in this season isn't going to be the same, even the main character, because it's a younger Flynn.
Well, I mean, when you consider this, I don't know if any of you guys have played one of those games where you play through a set period of time. It's like a Ocarina of Time. You play through a set period of time, and then you rewind back to the beginning of it, but you have more information on how to proceed. That feels like what the Peripheral is basically doing, is we are getting a rewind, and then we're going to start this whole process again with more information. I think the end goal of this is going to be to find a way to avoid the jackpot and provide a future without any of those calamities. And I'm willing to bet if this got like a 7-season run like it should, that would be the plot line, is every season they eliminate one point of the catastrophe in the system.
Yeah, and also I don't think that it was a younger Flynn that went into the future, because the way she was talking, it sounds like it's the one that we've been with the entire time. It's just in that timeline, in order for her consciousness to be transferred with the data, I think she needed her body to die in the process, but something was set up for her to wake up in the future.
The death of the body was the RI. It was to evade the RI. Why come after Flynn and her family if Flynn's dead?
Yeah.
And why look for Flynn if Flynn, like, you can't go after that Flynn and get the information for which year she went to, because only Flynn went back in time. And she went to 2032. It was on the dial. That was the year she picked, and we start this the season in 2036. That's why I'm for sure that it was younger. Is the time zone she chose was 2032.
I thought the show started in 2032.
2036. And then there was the 2032 scene, which was the implants in the Marines. So my thinking is they went back she tried to go back as close to the Texas invasion as possible, so that she can save the paraplegic dude.
Yeah.
Like according to the timeline that I see in my head, based off of all the data that I had.
Okay, then you might want to double check, because I thought the Texas thing happened in 2028.
Now, for the record, when
I think so.
Zapatos looks at his timeline, what it actually is a cardboard, a corkboard setup with a whole bunch of pictures and a bunch of red string everywhere.
And this is how I know that Corion's a bullshit viewer into the astral projection, because it's clearly sticky notes.
Dumbass. Anyway,
there's a timeline sitting above my head right now.
No, because I thought it took. I thought the main.
Entirely.
Yeah, I thought 2032 was our main timeline, and then 2028 was where they got where the Texas War occurred, whatever that was about, and then in I knew I should have researched it.
It was 2036, but I'll double check.
Yeah. If you want to check on that, because I'm pretty sure that what happened was she actually did go to the future. She's just there permanently for now until something gets established, to where she can go back to the other timeline that she changed, and it's or did they say and confirm that the jackpot was on course with that timeline anyway, and that's why everybody's screwed?
It's not that it's on course and screwed because of the timeline. It's on course and screwed because the RI owns the stub. What they did, their whole plan was to send the stuff that's in her head back to herself earlier, and it looked like 2032 is when they picked in the episode, or in the final episode. I'm opening episode 1 now in my ear. But then what they were doing was the same way that Alita contacted her in 2036, she contacted herself in 2032 and started the whole 2032 process with the police team, rather than with the Collect, or rather than with the RI. And the RI knows that she did this, but they don't know when she did it. They don't know where she sent herself the information,
right?
And they can't track it in any way. And her doing this creates its own stub that, until they find the start of that stub, they have to sift through all of the dates until they find the exact information that delineates the 3 timelines. Because as we have finally figured out, there are only 3 concurrent timelines at the end of episode 1, or season 1
so far.
Season 1, because that's we have the one, so Flynn's initial 2036. Let me find that time real quick. 2100. Oh, I'm gonna find it. You get.
Yeah. So, you have a thought, Corion? Go ahead.
No, go for it.
Well, I'm just skimming over this just to make sure we're on the same page with the
Found it.
here.
It was 2032. She went right back to herself before Alita.
Yeah, because she was talking about a reset. But I think what she did, based off of this article from CNET here, is that she does want to go. She basically picked a time to go back to her older self, and so it's still the same Flynn, but it's just at some point she ends up resetting, but she still has to die in the timeline we're used to, because that's where the RI needs to stop finding her.
Right. So we've got the 2109 timeline, then we've got the original 2032, and I just found it was 2032 that this started. So she probably literally went right back to after meeting Alita. When she already had the headset.
Yeah.
Like I said, this is the plot to Majora's Mask. We're just going back the next through the timeline again.
Here, I'll just read off of this article, because it seems we did need to do a little bit more research on it, but that's okay. Here, I'll share it in the chat. We can all just go over this together. in real time, because why not? Let's shake it up this week. I realized our episodes don't have to progress all the same way every single time. We're not that boring of a show, I would think.
Yeah, and that's why I opened with just a gripe that had been pissing me off all morning.
And that's totally fine. We could totally do that. I would have given you the whole camera if you wanted to keep
pop
going.
Culture gripe. That was a pop culture gripe.
Yeah, we're movies, games, shows, and books. We're storytelling is basically, that's our thing. So I could really just sum it up to that. We talk about storytelling. Whether it's a game, book, movie, show, something you set around a campfire, some kind of crazy lullaby that Arende whispers to his bees, whatever.
We support it.
Insert Galenda's hobby of choice that I know she's probably told me about and can't remember here. So yeah, all right. So from this article, it says, why does Flynn technically kill herself? From the very first episode, the RI had a hit put on Flynn simply because she'd seen too much thanks to the little sim game and the mysterious Alita setup. All right, we all know that. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead. Yet Flynn comes up with the ingenious plan to save herself and her town, even if it looks like she's out of the picture. In future London, she has Inspector Lowbeer. Oh, that's how you spell the name.
Bear?
Nice. What? Is
Yeah,
it pronounced
Low
Lowbear?
No,
Yeah.
I think it's low beer, but I just kept seeing it on my Amazon subtitles as low beer or low bear.
Weird. It might have it spelled wrong in this one. I don't know. Low beer sounds like a pretty cool name. That's a better way to call a light beer. No, it's a low beer. Inspector Lowbeer had her lead her to her stub portal, which we saw. That's where she does the thing. When she can create a new connection with her body in the past. She convinces Dr. Newland that she's escaped for good by crushing the coordinates, a fancy antique-looking watch, and wakes up back in the mountain town of Clanton, North Carolina, a reboot that creates a new splinter timeline or stub, one Dr. Newland won't easily be able to get her hands on. Because this dooms her old, unpiloted body to die from malnourishment while attached to the headset, Flynn decides to turn this condemned self into an opportunity. She has Connor shoot her to get Dr. Newland off their backs and to look like a favor from Inspector Lowbeer and Dr. Newland, to Dr. Newland, so that Newland believes the inspector is an ally. Flynn then wakes up in future, that's what I caught on to. Flynn wakes up in future London where she and Lowbeer reunite. Now they can begin working on their master plan, accessing the world-saving data in Flynn's brain that will help them prevent the jackpot apocalypse. All right, that end switch is where things become Westworld level tricky. Because of the show's editing, it looks like the consciousness of the dead Flynn has been transferred to Flynn's peripheral. However, the past Flynn died without wearing a headset. The way this is possible might be that because Flynn created a new base stub, she was only a pilot in her old body. When it died, she returned to her new stub, then from there, still wearing the headset, she could jump into her future peripheral. Good luck deciphering all that. Okay, so it is confusing. Well, that's good to know. So
I feel like the confusing part is different than what that article really, because none of that was explained in the show. So there's no like show data to explain that, except for the scenes that matched up. And I think the part that makes it so that the difference with that article versus what really happened was the part where the person that came up with the plan still had to be the dead Flynn. But because she went back in time, my theory is that maybe she only went back like 3 weeks, like right after Alita. So she still had all the information, but then only kind of changed stuff up, but then like wasn't very far. Like she wasn't like, oh my God, my future self, what do you mean the future? And like had to have a 6-week long discussion about it. Instead it was like, no, I'm healed from like next week, and this is what happens in that week. We got to do this all differently. And so that Flynn just walked off and died because she knew she had to do that. And all that part about the article, setting it up, helping Lowbeer, all of that connects, like ... But why that person died, I don't think it was an operated sim. I think that was legit the old newest version, because she's 2 weeks ahead of the old week. The older, newest version of Flynn had to still die to make it look like Flynn was now out of the picture.
Well,
and so it
apparently the body was just going to die sitting lifeless anyway and unconscious because of I guess she can move her consciousness around now, or maybe the headset
well, that's what I'm saying
is
that
more.
my theory is she went back to herself, told herself everything through the little bead thing in the 2100 where like they can actually download memories, right? You just turn it up to listen to them closer and you can hear their memories. And there's that whole scene with her and the 2100 black dude, Wolf, and Wolf like they find his old house because they share memories. So there was that little taste there. So my thinking is she literally went back to herself in it's like a weird jump. So like she went back to the first time she got to 2100 and downloaded all that stuff to the peripheral, but then sent all of that information back even further to 2032, probably like 2 weeks earlier, or the beginning of the season 1. And so season 2 will be season 1 again with all of season 1's information, starting completely over again. Like that was the kind of circle that I thought they did. It's a very small loop, but it literally just resets everything in 2032, not in 2100.
Yeah, it's the Majora's Mask effect. We're getting a reset back to your version, like where the game started, but you now have the information that you acquired on the first run through. So the most efficient
New Game
ways
Plus.
to do things. Yeah, it's New Game Plus.
New Game Plus. That's what it feels like. That's what I thought. That makes way more sense. That's because the RI had already initiated all the steps necessary for the nuclear jackpot, which wasn't supposed to be until the third phase of the jackpot, or the third jackpot.
Right,
so
but it got accelerated.
That's okay. So that's where the stub is. The stub is literally just right back to before they found out Flynn knew everything.
Well, we don't know that. It just, all we know is that it's a
Right.
stub off of a stub.
Well, no, that's what I mean though, is like because she chose 2032 and it started at 2032, it's probably literally within weeks of her initially getting the headset in episode 1 of season 1.
Yeah, so I mean, at some point we're gonna have to start calling 2100 the Stub Hub, but until then.
I mean, that is where all the stubs originate. No, this is good. This is causing us to actually have to really scratch our brains here, because it kind of left me in a bit of a head scratcher, and it's, well, everything leading up until the end of this season was masterfully done. And I mean, even this ending, for as crazy as it is to try to understand, I mean, I'm ready for season 2. Like,
yeah,
I'm ready for more.
It's a lot to unpack, but it's not a bad unpack, right?
No,
So,
not even in the slightest. It's actually really cool because if you think about it, 2100 is still progressing. That through line hasn't changed. All those players are still aware of all the magic. They're still trying to fight for their own country and man, like person and all that stuff, like their society, whether it's the Klept, the police, or the RI, they're all fighting for their country. And then 2032 is reset back, but only far enough that like they don't have to get a whole new Flynn all the way up to date, and they don't have to get a whole new Burton all the way up to date. Instead, they're like, no, we're gonna mess with the weeks, and that's like that New Game Plus of 2032, only because like they need the RI to think they went further back. They need the RI to spin up other stubs to try and find them, in like trying to save Burton, trying to save the other guy. And that's like the misleading fact. It's like, no, because the whole mom thing, like Flynn's smart enough to know that like that's what they think is gonna be the determining factor as to how far back she goes, is because her mom needs to be saved. And I think Flynn was like, that's what they're gonna think, so I'm gonna deceive them by going, no, my mom's still gonna die in 27 days.
Yeah, so Screen Rant seems to agree with you on that this is a parallel Flynn, which is definitely possible. So it seems that I think we're gonna need to. I think we're just gonna need to wait and see what season 2 says, because it
Demand
seems like it's
season 2. Hashtag renew Peripheral.
I think Peripheral's already slated. Let's check the IMDb, since it's super reliable.
I've only been waiting for Italian Job 2 since 2004, and IMDb says it's coming soon.
Well,
Hey man, I've been waiting for a decent sequel to the Transformers movie since 1985. So I feel you, brother.
Yep, and Christians have been waiting for Jesus for a lot longer. So the word soon is just—it's really just not a great word to describe anything.
There's really 3 versions of soon. There's the soon that you tell somebody when you just need 5 minutes. There's the parent talking to the kids soon, which could be any week now. And then there's like Microsoft releasing a new game soon, right?
There's Skyrim 6.
Yeah, like
Elden Ring.
Duke Nukem Forever soon, right?
Well, we don't know about GTA 6. Well, GTA 6 we actually finally have some progress on, but you know what we don't have progress on? Half-Life 3. So.
Oh yeah, and Randy's like, you forgot Blizzard soon. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Blizzard soon is another textbook example of this, right?
I need context.
For StarCraft 3, the will never happen. Or
I wanted World of StarCraft.
If you want World of StarCraft, there's this beautiful universe called Warhammer. It's really fantastic. I highly recommend it.
According to Fansided, no news is good news. Peripheral has not been canceled, but it also hasn't been renewed.
Oh, great! It's getting the Orville treatment right now. Awesome. Yeah. So we gotta wait. Well,
Amazon has been a lot better about this. Like, I haven't heard anything about Reacher getting a new season or Terminalist, but I assume both of them are ready for it.
What is Terminalist season 2 gonna be? Did you didn't read the book yet, did you?
Books. No, but the author wrote way more books.
Oh wait, did he write more Terminalist books?
I can't remember.
Oh.
I want to say it's. Oh man, I think so. I think,
even the first book with its
basically James Reese is like a different version of Reacher with less time. So I got any book he could just get ganked.
You should probably actually read the book all the way through to the end. There's a little tidbit at the end of the book that kind of confirms that James Reese's terminal diagnosis was a little premature. But they don't really touch on that in the show.
That seemed like it seems like they kind of did, but in the first couple episodes and just gaffed it off. Like they're like, no, this has all been faked, and then never said if that was true or not.
But I definitely want more.
Reacher got renewed.
Reacher has been renewed. All right, awesome. I'll have to read that second book too. Ooh. That one I did enjoy reading the book first. That was basically the production for Reacher was amazing because it was basically like a live action book. So yeah, I'm definitely excited for that one. I'll probably read the book before.
Yeah, and I think I'm gonna have to pick up the Peripheral book over the Christmas break.
Oh yeah, no, I think we should definitely get the book done before season 2 comes out, so we can see. Because I've heard from a couple of other people that have mentioned it that on other channels that have said apparently the show does diverge from the book. So, what's up? We got Terminalist 2.
Who said that about Reacher?
Reacher? No.
No, we're talking Peripheral.
Peripheral.
But that's okay.
Sorry. But
that's okay because it's just 2 different stubs, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. But Terminalist Season 2, Chris Pratt was recently quoted saying, as of September, to the rabid fans of Terminalist out there, you have nothing to worry about. So it hasn't been renewed, but I think that's negotiations reasons.
Yeah.
But Season 2 of Reacher, yeah, no. For me, Reacher, the show, is constantly the test of Amazon's ability, or whoever produced Reacher, ability to maintain respect for Lee Childs, because I've been reading all of the books in a row, and I want to say I'm all the way caught up. I might be 2 or 3 insert books missing, but like, I really am excited for that Reacher to continue, and Peripheral too. Though there's so much good.
Yeah. No, we're
Somebody want to take in fan mail?
Arende seems very seems very particular about this, but go ahead.
I've got this. I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna do it in my like legal eagle voice here. I hope you guys are ready. Soon, copyright 2004-2022 Blizzard Entertainment Inc. All rights reserved. Soon does not imply any particular date, time, decade, century, or millennia in the past, present, or certainly not the future. Soon shall make no contract or warranty between Blizzard Entertainment and the end user. Soon will not arrive someday. Blizzard does not guarantee that soon will be here before the end of time. Do not make any plans based on soon, as Blizzard will not be liable for any use, misuse, or even casual glancing at soon. And there we go.
Honestly, though, I feel like that is just a great way to get rid of like the naggy Nancy's. But then if you keep using that after your soon does start to reach decades, like, no, they were right.
Well, I mean, okay. I can understand why Blizzard has this attitude, because they literally did face a group of barely contained rabid fans that literally labeled themselves as Operation CWAL, or can't wait any longer, that started an active campaign of harassing the studio to get a new game made. So I understand why they would put down a libel setup like this.
Okay, contract, yes, but to me, that's how you go to like investors and be like, you guys aren't sure if this game is wanted. Here's the hate mail for us taking too long.
Yeah.
Arende clarifies, that's a meme started by the players and someone made a legalese version of the meme. Nice. I
Still
love
makes sense, though.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's totally something they'd probably copy and paste on their website anyway, because they're like, well, it technically covers everything, so all right,
Well,
just throw it on there.
Old school Blizzard would do that. New Activision Blizzard,
Microsoft.
Yeah. Microsoft
Division,
Activision.
Blizzard.
Yeah. I don't know if they've got the sense of humor that they once had, which is
okay,
really why I don't want to see
guys, dear big corporations, the media, the acquisition of media by 6 companies, that's not a good idea with games, okay? Because we're only gonna do game as a service for so long before we get tired of that shit, and you got to think of some other scam to get our money.
No.
Otherwise,
games as a service works if you actually service.
Right, exactly. Now imagine if they get a freaking oligopoly on all the gaming, then we're gonna have garbage forever. That's why we have garbage now in movies and whatnot, because the competition got thin for a little while.
I don't get why Microsoft isn't embracing more of the Netflix model, where like they are a permanent investor in these production companies with a little bit more like say in what gets produced, but that's about it. Like that way the production companies can feel like gamers making games and always feel like the money's going to be coming, because Microsoft's making the actual transaction part possible. But like if Microsoft acts like a gatekeeper to product development for actual games, that's like having the hall monitor try to tell you what's a cool drawing. Like, my mom says you can't draw the devil, so bad drawing.
All right, here's I want to grab the mic here for a few minutes, because I've got a little bit of a video game rant, and I want to explain why I feel the way I do here.
I'm gonna get this right eventually. I just need to imagine that Corione's sitting next to me. So. And down there, where he belongs, is John, beneath me.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. All right. So, well, he's lifting us up. He's raising us up. That's what he does best.
That's what restoring respect in discourse is about, is raising up your opposition.
There you go. All right. So, look. The reason why Microsoft is able to do what it's doing, where it's buying up studios like they're Infinity Gems, is because they studios under them and bring them in-house. This is a good plan. But I want to present
you
phase
cut out.
2, and it is the one thing.
You cut out for a second. Try start
okay.
over.
So we're
And there you go
All
again.
right,
It
so
looks
the
like
reason why
Microsoft really
Microsoft-
doesn't want you to talk about this.
Oh God. Okay. So what they did was they started buying studios up like Infinity Gems to control their IP. There is one thing that I think they need to do next, and it is also the one thing that Games Workshop has done that is actually good in the last 10 years. Okay? And it's this. They chopped up their IP. Games Workshop chopped up their IP and gave it, like, sections of it to 20 different studios, and let those 20 different studios produce games in their game world, but like only small sections of it to see what they did with it. Now, the reason why this was good was because everybody got a little chunk of game, and if they did good, they got a bigger chunk of the universe to work with. And if their game sucked, it didn't sell, they got rid of that developer. This is what Microsoft needs to do. They need to grab 30 indie development houses and give them like the Fable franchise or Syndicate or Dungeon Keeper, some of the IPs that they've more or less ignored for ages, and let them do something with it. And then put it out, and if those little companies make money at those games, then they get access to better IPs. But like, for example, no one gets access to Halo until they can prove themselves with some of the lower tier IPs and can prove that they can make a really solid game. Then they get to play with the big boys.
I mean, that's a cool idea, but I mean, at this point, if you've managed to produce a game that was successful, you can have Halo at this point. I mean,
But to me, I think the faster, more efficient method to this is stop hiring people for jobs and instead hire them for roles. Like, I need somebody that wants to build fantasy realms. Oh, which fantasy realms are you building? Fantasy realms. And then from there, you have game writers, game narrative designers, game designers. Then they start picking the people that best represent the vision they intend to create. And so managers pick teams. Teams are glued to managers. And then that product comes out. And then from there, all the other managers can steal from that team because they're just a team of people now. And they can move like water through these IPs. And I think like taking Corion's idea and just making it more like managers, like the more successful manager, the more valuable IP you get to manage, but the team you pick is completely up to you when you take that IP on. So you're not always going to bring your fantasy over to your sci-fi, over to your realism. Because sometimes those sci-fi designers are only good at sci-fi. They're never going to figure out how to do a sword swing. And sometimes the sword swing only ever wants to do the sword swing. So I think that like, if you let the designers design and you let the managers manage, you're more likely to get better products because some people are designed to manage. I know that's like something that I've spent years training at.
And you know, maybe have like,
that
I don't know.
That is actually the Valve design system.
Yeah. That's probably why it was successful then.
Well, that's why Valve's Steam, that's why it's all working.
Mm-hmm.
They went like,
well, the
Valve,
problem
I think,
is it also leads to...
What's that?
I was going to say, it's great, but until you realize that they can't make a third game in any of their trilogies.
So you get at least two games, two really great games, and then a lifetime of sorrow and regret. But anyway.
But I put that on writers.
Or a lifetime of wanting,
I put that on writers not taking the Tolkien method to games, which is like create your universe and your lore and then write your story, so that way as the story gets longer, bigger, or different, it always has somewhere to belong, and it doesn't feel like story 3 has to be this rise in escalation that's entirely unbelievable and will destroy all fan love, or it has to be this whole shift that ruins like people's enjoyment of the system. Instead, like, write something that can always be added to because you have ways of adding to it. And I think that's where, like, Valve, and I think it's more of a narrative failure than it is like an entire company failure.
You know, speaking of Lord of the Rings, I think we just got a really good transition.
Yeah.
From
Yeah.
games.
So, if you're not like me and you decided to suffer through Rings of Power for whatever reason, we decided to help you over that burden with by watching Frodo take the burden for you, and
with you,
and we
We're
are
watching with you.
yeah we are now watching Lord of the Rings for the month of December. Of
Correction.
course.
We are hosting a watch along of Lord of the Rings for December.
Right.
We are the hosts. We'll take the burdens. If anybody asks you why you're watching it, I'm just watching it to join the Writer Brothers.
Yeah, join the discussion and contribute, which is what we do here. We're all about sharing ideas, regardless of where they might come
Anything.
from. Well,
Pop culture, like you are the
no.
culture.
It's a very, very few. Well, okay, yes, we're pretty much all open to all pop culture ideas. Now, there's very, very
at
few
the Writer
times.
Brothers, that's what we discuss.
There's very few times and very few topics that will jump on and say no, and our method is, instead of telling you what those are, we'll just wait till you stumble upon them, because there's a good chance that if you're a decent law-abiding citizen, you're not going to stumble into those topics. So it's all good. But yes, we are more or less a conduit of information of just about all ideas.
Is that why? Wait a minute. No. Let's be clear. You two are the decent law-abiding ones, and I just avoid bringing up the ones I know you guys are going to say no to, and we carry on from there.
No, I don't think.
No,
yeah,
I
guess.
don't want to say that the threshold is as low as it is.
Right.
For me personally, so I just don't ever say you're getting close.
Yeah, no,
Well,
it's...
I'll tell you what, guys. For the April 1st show, I've got something for us to review, just because I want to see if I can make somebody's eyes bug out of their sockets.
Well, I look forward to it. Arende says, Rings of Power? Isn't that the best thing next to Shakespeare? Yeah. No, I also read a stupid declarative article about how it's better than Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, or how the Galadriel in Rings of Power was more accurate. And I'm like, wow.
I mean, if you compare it to the source of funding, basically a queen did pay for Rings of Power. Like, if Jeff Bezos isn't a king, or a queen, I don't know what it is.
I would have actually equated Jeff Bezos to Smaug, but
I
dude who
wouldn't
sits on
though,
a
because like he
colossal
does
pile of
spend
gold.
his money. Yeah, but he does spend it, like rewriting Belgium laws and architecture so that he can fit his boat out. Like, did nobody think that was going to be an issue and they couldn't just build it on the other side of the harbor? Like, he could have paid for an entire factory to be built on the other side. He's a queen.
Yeah.
He is a
through
diva.
your nation's
I mean,
laws, whatever he wants.
Did you see the design of his freaking rocket? The thing's a penis, okay? That's not mince words. Like, that's not that's not. I get that rockets, they all have that phallic shape because, well, that's how they function. That's how they most efficiently get to space. This might come as a shock, but the space shuttle with its rocket boosters, not very aerodynamic. Whereas, an actual rocket type device
actually, that's completely counterintuitive. Shuttle is 100% aerodynamic. That's why it was designed that way, so that it can re-enter and land in the air.
Right.
A rocket ship is trying to literally project itself like an arrow through, like, isn't it like 14 miles? How many miles?
26
miles of air. It has to cut. So it's supposed to be
I thought it was 60.
relatively pointed, depending on where you stand, I guess.
It also depends on where you view the start of space. The start of space can be a little nebulous depending on what your definition of space is.
Arende says that's an Austin
listened...
Powers rocket. Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with
well,
that.
I mean, let's be clear. Bezos is bald, right? He has mentioned he likes cats, and he has a phallic rocket. He's one scar away from Dr. Evil.
And
so are you saying he has a twin brother with hair? who's in yeah, who's in MI5
like son?
Anyway,
but well, no. So like the rocket thing, though, I heard Neil deGrasse Tyson explained it. He didn't. If you were to take the planet of the Earth and take the ratio of the planet as a standard schoolroom globe that like spins around, and put a dime on it, that's how far he went. It's either 1 dime or 2 dimes outside of the like Earth, which was still technically borderline in Earth, because it was literally like 2 dimes worth of space.
Actually, if you really want to get technical,
distance.
Earth's atmosphere actually extends well past the moon. It's been discovered. As it turns out, our atmosphere is constantly outputting and expanding. And so, no, you can't breathe on the moon.
Well, it's absorbing.
But it's
taking whatever space dust it can.
Well, it's just pushing out.
Gravitational retention. Well,
and
I think it's
not
more
with
like
that
spiral
attitude, you can't breathe on the moon
at all times, but with air.
Right, it's just that easy. You just gotta believe.
There you go.
Yeah, no, it's the thing about it, and I don't know how we're talking about rockets with Lord of the Rings, but here we are. The thing about it is like I said, it's not the shuttle launching into space is not as efficient as a rocket. That's why the program was eventually decommissioned, because the rocket is far more efficient than a shuttle mounted on a rocket.
Right. Well, that's where Tesla comes in, is the idea that
he can land a rocket.
The reason it doesn't. Exactly. The reason it's not cost efficient is because the shuttle is saved, but the most expensive portion of the rocket that got the shuttle to space is just dropped wherever it can get dropped. And now SpaceX has developed a catch system, 2 separate catch systems, which is like insanely impressive.
Well, it's not even just a catch system. Some of it's entirely self-landing. We actually have ships that can take off and land from Earth now.
So that's one catch system, is it can catch itself. The second catch system is he's developed, I don't know if it's done yet or if it's still in production, but he's developing a way to have barges in the ocean that are geo-linked to the rocket, so that if the rocket falls into the ocean, he can catch it on the barge and save it. So that's 2 separate catch systems.
Yep. Arende writes in, Kármán line is the edge of space, generally considered 100 kilometers or 62 miles. There we go. Arende with the knowledge bomb.
There you go.
I love when this show turns educational.
Getting back to Lord of the Rings, though.
Yes, now back to fantasy. Right. Enough class for one day. It's time to daydream.
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings is a book I have not read yet. It's a book I'm not ready to read just yet. I've got a few more books I'd probably like to put under my belt before I tackle this juggernaut of a story. However, I first saw Lord of the Rings in the theater, coming up on 21 years ago now, because it came out in, I want to say December 13th. Oh, wait, it would say on the poster, but the poster's too small to read. So 21 years later, 21 years on, the movie is starting to show its age a little bit. The CGI was great for its time. If they came out with a special edition touch-up on the CGI, I personally wouldn't be mad, because on the other side of it, the timeless quality of the movie that still stands out and is so perfect is all the use of practical effects. Guys, we are 21 years specifically on since Fellowship of the Ring, and the jury is clearly decided on the use of practical effects in filmmaking. There's just no comparison.
We have 3D printers. You have no excuse.
Yes, absolutely. Right on the money, John. There really isn't, because oh yeah, that was like a good chunk of the budget from what I remember from watching the special the special features. Man, do you guys remember when you used to watch special features on DVDs?
Dude, you guys remember when your remote was more than 7 buttons?
Yeah. Oh well, mine still is.
Well, do you guys want to see what I've been producing on my 3D printer lately?
Sure. An orc or troll.
Oh, troll, yeah. But I mean, if I can produce that at home with my crappy setup, guys,
You can print
professional prop
Minas
masters?
Tirith. Yeah.
You can pay
Yeah.
somebody who does this as a job do it for you. You have the budget.
Yeah, exactly. No,
You can port Blender files. And most people use Blender for animation because it's the free one. So like pretty sure the top tier, I want to say Houdini is the most used in film right now. Pretty sure Houdini files
Probably.
port as well. I even know Adobe files port. I personally use Adobe for where I do my sketches, and I port them to Blender for my actual 3D meshes. And then Blender ports to freaking 3D printer software. So no excuse.
yeah.
I don't even work in any of these industries or fields, and I know all of that. So no
Yep.
excuse.
Skogliotin writes in, beer, friends. Beer to you, buddy. And Arende says, oh wait, I think that's a Cheers icon. But hey, I prefer beer over Cheers. We'll actually get to Cheers in a minute. Arende says, that's obviously a resin printer. Filament is rather bad at making things look like, or things like a mini.
things like a mini.
I did some cool beehive, or did a cool beehive though. Nice. Well, that's pretty. Oh,
Yeah.
do your bees actually live in it?
Yeah, they would. Some of the 3D printed beehives look awesome. Yes, I am using a resin printer. Filament I find is better for larger projects like a beehive, and resin printers are better for what I'm doing, which is cool little pieces that look awesome when you set them up right.
I think he was just bringing that up more to. Yeah, I think he was bringing that up more to say which one he's using.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh well, tiny model beehive. Now you know how to make the big beehive.
There you go.
Yeah. I actually kind of like that the CG. It gives the movie some wrinkles, but like I said, it really shows that it makes a difference when you use practical effects. I mean, one of the reasons I being a more objective person, you can't let your bias get in, so I'll probably be praising Star Wars Force Awakens till the day I die for its masterful blend of practical and digital effects, and it did a very good job of blending them. I mean, bad story, absolutely. Garbage characters all around, even using the legacy characters, they didn't do them justice. But man, did the movie look pretty. Unfortunately, that's not good enough for us here at the Writer Brothers. We expect a good story. Actually, you can have garbage visuals, and if it's an amazing story, we'll put it out there. We'll go out of our way to say, hey, this production looks like crap, but man, what a twist. And we'll promote it. We're all about good storytelling here, and if your production just isn't the Lord of the Rings quality that you're hoping for, well, fine. If the story is there, that's going to matter more in the long run, because that's what people go back to. There's a reason people are going back to older Star Trek now after watching the current stuff and are invested in it because it's good. It's good stories. It's good stuff. Mm-hmm. And Rende writes in, gotta love practical effects. Just look at Gandalf's first staff, designed to hold a pipe and a glowing crystal, but still looks natural. Yeah, actually... Someone had mentioned that years ago, and I actually saw him doing it in the movie this time. I noticed it for the first time, and I was like, oh.
That's a little bit more costume, I want to say.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No,
still practical, still awesome. Still
okay.
Hold on.
John, 5 or 10 years ago, I would agree with that. But they use CG for costumes now, so I'm sorry.
Not everyone
Arende's comment's actually more right now than it would.
But I don't know if I've seen a lot of CG staffs that I know of, aside from like the Transformers one. But I did have a few other points to jump in on based off of your comments. One of the ones is like that's probably my all-time favorite thing about Lord of the Rings, and the historical through line for me as a fan of the Lord of the Rings trilogy was that as the CG, like I never saw Lord of the Rings until this one came out extended edition, because in our household, like we weren't allowed to see this one because it was so grotesque. My parents were well aware of the effect of movies and nightmares. And so in this, as this one is rough, I've already recently rewatched these, and by recently I mean in the last 6 months, and then watching all three, that same like rise of CGI, like to me that was their version of escalating power imbalance or escalating power whatever in a trilogy. And that's what I think movies should be like. That's where we're like I heard a recent discussion on the Night's Watch where they talked about the more money a movie makes, the more money the next movie has to be made. And while that's true, I think the fallacy in that is that like it has to be different because of the money. All that has to really be different is escalating effects, escalating expanse. You shouldn't have to escalate everything, including like the amount of like it shouldn't go from like it like I love Fast and Furious because it just escalates the power imbalance way too much.
Okay, so while I've got a second here, I'm going to jump in and take over because I've been waiting patiently, and here it is. When you mentioned the CG effects,
First of all, hail Lordville Nation. All right, go ahead.
All right, so when you've commented on the CG effects, I'd like to ask your opinion because I have my opinion on this, and I want to know what the panel thinks. What do you think was the worst CG in the first movie versus the best? Now, I'm going to answer for me first because that's fair. The worst CG to me was where Gollum was in the first movie. I just thought the hit when he shows up in CG in the Mines of Moria, it looks like crap. And the best to me was that Balrog. That thing looked fantastic, even on the replay, with an honorable mention to the Horsey River, Horsey River Magic Thunder.
Quiet baby for a second, so I'm gonna jump in here. Worst for me is the Sauron death at the beginning of the movie, because as it pulls away from him in Isildur, they're in the middle of an open plain, but when it zooms in, they're under a hill.
Okay.
So that just doesn't make any logistical sense. Best, is the Balrog. 10 out of 10. Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with the Balrog. I think the worst for me was the armies in the opening scene. That was when I noticed right away. I was like, that's. But that's also where I give a lot of credit for this movie because, unlike a certain somebody, Jackson used it purposely. He used it to just to tell the narrative of massive armies of orcs, or massive armies of elves and all that such. So he doesn't use it for everything, unlike the Star Wars prequels or anything on the Sci-Fi Channel. Is that still around, the Sci-Fi Channel? SYFY?
It's Siffy now or something?
Yeah, it's been Siffy for a while.
Siffy.
But that's my point. It's like, I'm not saying that you can't have CG effects. And I mean, the thing is, though, you're going to more or less mark for your time. Although, I still hold that the 2009 Trek CG is still some of the best ever put to screen. And so you definitely get what you pay for when you put the money into it. And Marvel's obviously hurting from that because they've managed to piss off all of their favorite VFX people and have had to settle for what they can get. And so it really shows the difference when you invest the time correctly. And that's what I do appreciate, though, was Jackson was clearly more interested in the miniatures, in the practical stuff, in the forced perspectives, in all the old camera tricks that still, like I said, hold up to this day. I remember, I think some years ago, someone was like, oh, all movies are just going to be computer generated. All right, it's not entirely wrong. Some of them are. But Lord of the Rings proves practical effects aren't ever going away. There will never not be a time where you don't use practical effects.
I think both are due their appropriate like justice. I think there's this one really cool movie on Hulu that was made entirely in Blender. I want to say it was like part of Blender's showcase for their newest like big update. And the way they combined practical effects was they took stuff from like Home Depot and built piped stuff, and then they blendered those pipes into scenes around it to make I want to say it was like a cyberpunk world, and then they made also a plant-based world, like a whole new Prometheus, like is a new world. And they did that by taking practical effects and rendering them properly into Blender. And I think that's the big transition, and I think that's also like what Peter Jackson was doing with the practical effects, is they put the director in the right headspace. It's really hard to see an army of thousands if you see 10 guys in goofy outfits. But if you have literally projected in front of you an army of thousands, and you can even show the actors like, hey man, this is why you're laying this way, and you can see these guys are all running at you, so like that's the situation you're under. Oh, okay, now I can exemplify that stress. Like that's what practical effects do. That's what they did for Star Wars. Like a lot of people don't like credit Star Wars, I think appropriately. Like Star Wars took the hero's journey and then also took science fiction, aliens, magic.
Clarify what Star Wars you're referring to, please.
The idea, the original. Like the original 1970s Star Wars took the universe, exploded it, and then simultaneously condensed it into the most known storyline ever. Hero's Journey, King Arthur. And that was so much explosion. Like it was in and of itself its own big bang in terms of literary ability. Now all of these visual thinkers, kids like me, kids like you guys, we all grew up with this total possibility. Like there was a time when people didn't think past our atmosphere or past the moon. And we're here sitting thinking like, what if we had 37 solar systems containing 80 million planets? Like that's insane. And that's what Star Wars did. And that's way bigger than the credit it's usually given. Like, yeah, it was a really good story. It was fun. It had the Force and Jedi.
I guess
a lot of people when they go to like talk about it to people that don't understand Star Wars, they won't credit that big thing. It exploded the universe for people that needed the universe bigger.
Well, one of the things I always heard growing up was that the original Star Wars, part of the reason it was such a big pop culture icon was because of the practical effects that it used to the extreme that it did. And I mean, I personally prefer watching the original trilogy over the sequels, and over the prequels. I'm never watching the sequels again.
That's what I intended to convey, was like they used practical effects to show us in different worlds, and like the idea of a galaxy far, far away, that was enough to separate us from reality, but also be 100% willing to find out what's going on in this galaxy far, far away. And that was all practical effects.
Yeah.
Like
so. There was another piece I wanted to bring up, because I think we're starting to stray from the path here. I wanted to talk about a little bit about the choice of the actors for the members of the Fellowship, because I feel like that was a super critical component to these movies, that they pick the right people for these roles. Right? We have, I'll give you some examples. We have Christopher Lee as Sauron. Christopher Lee knew Tolkien and was a routine friend, and they routinely met up. And there were moments where Peter Jackson originally wanted to have Christopher Lee play Gandalf, and Christopher Lee was like, look, I'm getting too old for this. You know who you should pick? That young pup, right? McKellen. But Christopher Lee consulted on this because he was practically a Tolkien scholar in his own right. Having, heard, J.R.R. go through all this stuff all the damn time, right? So that was kind of cool. they picked Sean Bean as Boromir because they knew he was going to die, and who can do a better death scene?
Oh, when he came on the screen, I was just like, spoiler alert. That's
Right.
all I think. Every time I see Sean Bean, I'm like, oh, I wonder who's dying in this movie and or show.
Right? You have John Rhys Davies, who I would argue is fantastic at playing surly characters, and having the surly dwarf played by this man was a perfect choice, right? If he didn't give you dwarf vibes, you weren't going to get them any other way, right? I think Orlando Bloom as Legolas was really the only outlier I can think of a person who you wouldn't think to play this character necessarily right out of the box, but he did a fantastic job, right? And then you've got Viggo Mortensen, who I would argue is real life Aragorn.
Oh, absolutely.
And I've got things to back this up. For starters, at the end of the filming the 3 movies, he found that he really, really liked his horse, so he bought his horse and took it home with him to his ranch, right? He insisted on any time somebody wasn't comfortable with whatever method of transport, of walking with them to the next site location, because he wanted to feel the journey with everyone else. And while he was doing that, he'd occasionally run off and fish, or run off and hunt, and bring back and eat or kill whatever he had gotten. He randomly would do things like, oh, I've got a rip in my, my costume, hold on, and went and got a sewing needle and just did it himself, right? He was living that ranger life about as hard as you can do without actually being a medieval ranger dealing with hobbits, elves, and dwarves. The man was just fantastic. At one point, apparently, during one of the fight scenes, he broke a bone in his foot, but didn't want to tell anyone because he was worried it'd delay the film, so he just went through it. There's another great scene in this movie. You know when he's fighting the big Uruk-hai near the end, and the Uruk-hai throws a dagger at him, and he just bats the thing out of the way with his sword? Fun fact, the guy who was playing the Uruk-hai was supposed to not throw the dagger directly at Viggo. He was supposed to aim way off to the side, and they would fix it in post. But the guy was so into the role, he accidentally threw it directly at Viggo, and Viggo still batted it out of the way without any problem, and just kept the scene going as if it was no big deal. He almost got stabbed in the face with a flying dagger. That is how badass this individual is.
Yeah, well, and to add to that, Rende wrote earlier, says, a cool thing about the CGI they used for the orc armies, the pathing of the orcs in the back would bug and set them running the opposite way. They realized it made sense. Deserters in the back, so they left it. So, yeah, I mean, it's so many cool things about this movie that just kind of happened, like the way that they did. Like, yeah, getting a dagger thrown at you, and actually having to deflect it, and then them just, I mean, what, what was going through Jackson's mind when that happened? He's just like, cut, I guess. We got it? Okay. Almost lost our star, but that's one of our many stars, I should say, but no big deal. Yeah, no, I love hearing stories like that, because that's what really makes the movie more alive, is the stuff that's unplanned, that just that the universe just kind of adds to enhance the experience. And so, yeah, no, that's I agree. Viggo Mortensen is definitely Aragorn. And all the roles were cast so perfectly. I mean, like I said, I do, not even having read the book, I feel like if I did, I would probably just, be imagining these characters at that point, because, I mean, yeah, so.
Yeah. And there are other things that you're going to notice when you read through the books. There are a couple of characters that were completely cut from the books that did not make the movie. Primarily because, when Tolkien was writing this, the only way I can describe it is, if you were to remove the actual war from this, it really reads like a Hobbit's food blog as he's backpacking through Europe or something. we go into like side stuff about like the history of, a bar, for example, that, really doesn't need to be in the movie, but it adds flavor to the world. People have argued that the character of Tom Bombadil in the books, some people missed him, but the truth of the matter is he doesn't really add to the plot. He's just a fun side character with some fun side story shenanigans going on. So, I think they did everything they could right. That's the kind of thing I love about this movie is, even to just sit down and figure out how you're going to take, the first book, which really could be a 6-hour movie on its own without too much of a problem, and condense it down to something that the human bladder can survive, is one monumental task.
Yeah.
And even then, with the special editions, they had to put in an intermission simply because the human bladder cannot survive the extended editions without at least one bathroom break.
Yeah, so I'm actually putting a link to our Facebook Live in the chat right now. For those of you that are watching, apparently YouTube is experiencing some outage issues, so if the video sounds or looks like crap, there's the alternate link to the Facebook.
Blame Mama Susan.
And then, John, if you want to toss the Twitch in there, if people would prefer to watch on Twitch instead of Facebook. Oh. Well, that's not good. For some reason, my video is only going to friends only. That's not supposed to be set that way. I don't know why it did that. I'll have to double check settings. So, John, please throw the Twitch link in there when you get a chance. Yeah, so we do simulcast for a reason. This is one of them, because unfortunately, websites can't constantly be relied on for function, as of course our resident IT witch would know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why aren't you doing anything about the gremlins, buddy? Come on.
Why? Because, well, did you see last Sunday's episode of my show? It tells you exactly why I'm not doing anything about the gremlins.
Oh, right. Yeah, of course. How could I forget? I didn't watch it yet. Sorry. It's been a busy week.
I watched Super Quest, saying.
Okay, fair enough. I got you. I hear you. No, I do try to watch and at least give my like and whatnot. It's just I needed a day off.
I know, and I'm only teasing. It's all good.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just it really shows how, like I said, practical effects are going to be around if you really want to, your movie to stand out, especially this day and age when literally everything is just CG vomit, it feels like. I mean, you can never go wrong with trying practical stuff. And it feels like a lost art this day and age, but I think it's definitely due for a comeback. And I think it's due to stay. I actually kind of found the horse CGI I did personally kind of feel was a little bit more dated, but like I said, I had already noticed the orc armies by then, so my mind was already, all right, yeah, the CG representations are what they are. And like I said, the effects that matter the most, where most of the plot happens, those are still good. And that's the other thing too, is the fight in this movie is unique compared to the rest of the trilogy, because we don't really get a fight scene that's mostly real like this. The rest of the time, next up we have Helm's Deep, which is kind of a CG army being thrown at a CG wall, and then we have Minas Tirith, which is just CG armies galore. There's reason for it. I mean, in the book it was kind of necessary, but yeah, it's just...
Well, I would even argue that the stakes are very different in this movie. I mean, yes, we all love the battles inside the Mines of Moria and whatnot, but I felt like the most suspenseful battle, if you can even really call it that, in this, was them getting out of the Shire while being chased down by the Ringwraiths, and them just trying to get to the ferry bridge to get across.
Yeah.
And that monumental jump Frodo has to make to try to get onto that ferry as it's leaving. I think speaks more volumes to the stakes, and the tension in that scene feels way more viable and valuable than a lot of the other stuff that we see in most cinema today.
Yeah, I would go so far as to say this isn't a hero's journey story so much as it is a coming of age story. Frodo is finally being given an excuse greater than himself, and same with Merry, Pippin, and Sam, an excuse bigger than their own individual wants, needs, desires, calls for safety, and they are challenged to be men about it, to be adults, to be bigger than the fears that are coming. Because I really
John,
like the way you
hold
say
on.
that, because
It is a hero's journey, but the hero is Sam, not Frodo.
well,
We're gonna let you
even-
chew on that,
I
John.
would say-
I do have fan mail. Michael Gabanik, who provides the music, the background track for this production, as well as our pre-show jams, has chimed in Lord of the Rings with an exclamation point. Welcome, Michael. Glad to have you on the. Glad to have you watching. Glad you're here, man. Check out the Hungarians. I'll post a link next stream.
You're gonna take Arenda's
And then
comment as well.
Yeah, Arende also writes in, says, I would love to see something like the Mines of Moria at the height of the Dwarf Kingdom in real life. The architecture Jackson used is so beautiful. Yes, I agree. Location shoots and set shoots in this movie were just...
Yeah.
Right, but back to the two thoughts. So the Sam's hero's journey, I don't think it is Sam's hero's journey. I really do think it is a coming of age story, and I think Sam represents the boy who grew up an adult. Sam never once wavered why he was there. He joined the Fellowship from the jump because he was there for his friend Frodo.
Oh,
And
no,
that was
no, no.
it. And he he had fiduciary connections, right? Contractual obligations as his gardener, but in reality Sam was there because he always knew that his job for Frodo was to be the caring friend that carried Frodo when Frodo couldn't carry himself.
Okay, well, hold on. Let me break it down for you, because I've got it right here ready to go, because I knew you would do this, and I was prepared for you this time. I'm activating my trap card here.
I love it, but that's the whole
All right.
point.
So, Sam definitely gets the call to adventure. We can all agree on that. We don't have to belabor that. The refusal of the call was when he's pulled in by Gandalf and he says, don't turn me into anything unnatural. He was afraid right there. We have it. The supernatural aid is, of course, Gandalf. The crossing of the threshold, I would argue, is when he gets to that point where this is the farthest I have ever gone from home. And the belly of the whale is the our moment here when they get to Rivendell and he's decided to now go on for the full adventure once they hit Rivendell.
Okay, so I would say the Rivendell, once they hit Rivendell, is the call. I would say,
Okay.
or not the call, but the chance to return, because
Okay, or the refusal. Yeah.
The refusal. I would say the mentor, if we are going to play the hero's journey card for Sam, the mentor is Galadriel, the good one, the one that actually represents a queen versus whatever Amazon paid for. And then the whale is Moria.
Yeah, okay.
Because
But it all
Frodo
still
gives him
tracks.
an out. Right. But I would also say that you could track that for Merry and Pippin and Frodo, and that's why I say it's a coming of age story, is because a coming of age story is a squad. It's
Right.
a group of young growing to adulthood.
So
Together and against each other.
So the reason why I didn't get
would say
into
it's 4 separate heroes' journeys, because each hobbit does be a hero of a people at some point throughout the journey. Sam's is just the first of the 4, and Frodo's is the most through of the 4. Merry and Pippin get 2 and 3.
Okay, so the reason why I did that is because there is specifically in the second set of Campbell's version of the hero's journey is the meeting with the goddess, which I would equate with Galadriel. Woman as temptress, we get with Sam, but it's slightly different, because instead of woman as temptress, we get Shelob, right? Because at that
Shelob
point,
wouldn't. I would, if you're gonna say woman of temptress, it's Smeagol.
well, yeah,
Because these,
right.
like we do have to acknowledge that Tolkien took the time to write only about men, because he said he never could write about the mysteries of women.
Yeah, well,
So
and
all of
that's-
his characters are men because he didn't want to disrespect women.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah, you can have
Smeagol
that.
would be the temptress.
Yeah, the atonement with the father, I would argue, is there is a scene where Sam says to Frodo, "Don't you leave him, Samwise Gamgee." And I've made a promise and I'm going to stick with it. That to me is the atonement. The apotheosis is
Gandalf,
when,
yeah.
right,
Because Gandalf's the one that made him make that promise.
exactly. Apotheosis, where he kind of rises to the challenge, I would argue is when Frodo goes down. The ultimate boon,
I
of
would say
course,
that
is
was
when he's-
Shelob.
Yeah, okay.
Because Sam navigated the same darkness that Frodo navigated, but Sam didn't have the light. And then he still fought off Shelob.
right. The ultimate
That's
boon.
a terrible abyss.
Yeah, the ultimate boon, of course, is obviously getting Frodo back and the ring, of course, right? The refusal of the return, because remember, these don't have to be done specifically in this order. The
Right.
refusal of the return, I would argue, is where we had that one moment when they were in Gondor and they were like, well, wait a minute, maybe we can get some aid here and we don't have to do this alone. The magic
that
flight.
was before the abyss. The
Right.
refusal of return is when Frodo finally fires him. Is officially like, get out, I hate
Yeah,
you.
we can do that too. The magic flight, I mean, dude, eagles, right? Rescue from without, I mean, yeah, Sam basically does
The
do
rescue
that.
from without was catching Frodo.
Yeah.
Like he was going over that cliff too. There were no OSHA safety guardrails on
Right.
that volcano. So jumping in and just grabbing.
Yep. The crossing of the
that's-
return threshold, I mean, that is quite literally
I
when
would
they
say
enter
that was the
Moria.
bed chamber. With
Okay.
the return threshold, yeah, I would say that's after the flight. Because that's when
Yeah.
that's where Sam decides, am I now a man's man who's gonna leave
is
forever?
on his way. Well, the Master of the Two Worlds, I would argue, is he's now come back a warrior, and he's a father and a farmer, right?
Well,
and
yeah, so
freedom
that's
to
where
live.
I say that's where I say
Yeah.
the question of return is when he gets to Rivendell again at the very end of the flight, and like now we don't see it, but headcanon tells us that he had to decide whether or not he was going back to the Shire or if he was going to be the new Bilbo, right? Because he had all of this journey, and so in that instance, he was like, no, I'm going back for the next greatest adventure, true love.
Yeah. And so, I mean, he hits every one of those points, but not everyone does. And that's my point, is every one of the characters has a moment in the hero's journey other than Sam where they fail on the journey in some fashion.
So in this instance, I would still go back to this being a coming of age story because Sam represents the noble warrior. He's the one who maintained honor from start to finish despite all adversity and still became the hero of the squad. Like the only people that know how much Sam didn't complain, didn't struggle. Like when you look at Jeff Bezos, you can obviously say like, no, that guy probably complained every day until he came up with his $1 billion idea. But when you look at Sam, only his friends will tell you like, no, this dude actually like kept his nose to the grindstone, was respectful, loving, caring, sacrificial, like every mark of a hero. When people call him a hero, they're understating his sacrifice.
Oh yeah, no,
and
100% is the MVP of the Fellowship. Like,
and I think that's the coming of age though, is Frodo found the darkness of everything and has to live with that for the rest of his life. Sam watched his friend deal with that and still decided to be better than what that made his friend. And that, like, without everybody in the four starting here in the Fellowship of the Ring, if the four of them hadn't all gone together, we wouldn't see the solid juxtaposition between the four. Because, like, we would have the opposites, right? We'd be like, Sam's the good guy, Frodo's the dick. But then if you have Merry and Pippin in there, you can combine the full four axes and be like, no, they're all different sides of different spectrums, and that's why each one is necessary to the whole group. And that's why I say it's a coming of age story, because every member is more important than the hero, while simultaneously the hero, even if it's Sam, is still, like, important.
Yeah, I mean,
like, this is one of the ones where all the characters matter.
Yeah, I mean, my argument really, at the end of the day, boils down to this as to why, in my opinion, Sam is absolutely the hero of this story. And it's really this. Out of every single character who winds up physically holding the ring, Sam is the only one who ends up willingly giving it up.
Two parts to that. I'm finally ready. I've been waiting. This is my chance. I mean, obviously, I'm going to really bring it up on the third ring, but this is the episode that makes it count. People say that the ring doesn't have transitive properties in terms of, like, why doesn't Sam have an issue carrying Frodo into Moria? And let me tell you why.
You mean Mordor?
He definitely, or into Mordor, right. When Sam is lugging him up the hill, he's struggling in his, like, most limited clothes. Like, if they had been willing, he probably would have been shirtless, like, trying to Hulk this guy up as best he could, and he was stumbling the whole time. But at the very end of the Fellowship of the Ring, Frodo, who's been bearing the ring this whole time, is being weighed down by it, plucks Sam out of the water and into the boat, while Sam is wearing full pots and pans, full backpack, full kit. So that means that these hobbits don't weigh anything. Because if that's, like, if Sam was, if weighed down, tired Frodo plucked Sam in full kit, into the boat, plucked him into the boat, dragging somebody wearing all of their hiking gear in full garb with, you know, clothes on and, like, a cloak, that's a long drag up.
Yes,
right?
it is.
No matter what. And Frodo did it. So when Sam is lugging Frodo up that mountain, who should be weighing skin and bones because he hasn't been eating, he's been carrying the ring, he's basically a meth addict, and Sam is barely crawling up Mordor. That's the transitive property, because Sam also lugged those pots and pans all the way through till they took them off right before that scene. So, like, the fact that that's my gripe, is people say that the transitive property didn't apply to Sam, but that goes to show
it absolutely did.
Missed that scene in and of itself was Sam's St. Christopher moment. The weight of the world was weighing him down, and, like, I feel like people don't give Jackson credit for nailing that, because there's so much setup where Sam is so used to carrying heavy human weight or hobbit weight level gear, and then in that scene Sam is like
while
I mean, that's Frodo.
That's an idea, certainly, and I mean, we won't have time to get too deep into it tonight, but that's okay. We have a whole 2 more movies to discuss about this. You also got to consider the other factors at play here. The first one being that the ring is closer to the volcano, so it's probably weighing on Frodo down. So you might be right in that instance that there is that transitiveness to it, but there's also the proximity. But you also got to consider, too, they're climbing a volcano that's active, that's erupting. There's not a whole lot of breathable air in the vicinity. So,
I'm seeing people say that, like, that scene shows that Sam, like, wasn't weighed down, because he did carry Frodo, and I'm saying no, they gave substantial setup to, in that instance, Sam was somehow carrying the weight of the world as he was climbing that hill, because for the first time Sam is actually breathing heavy.
Sure.
Like, he's slower, but he's always steady. He's always like, I'm here, I'm cooking potatoes. And he's carrying around the extra pots, pans, potatoes, food, all of his clothes. He did not go on a journey unprepared. Like, he is legit the most ready for this adventure, and nobody gave him credit for that. But then by this scene, he is suddenly weighed down. If anything, he should have Schwarzeneggered Frodo over that hill with all of that practice. Like, yeah, he should have been wheezing because of the oxygen, but this dude was bulking the whole journey.
Well, I am
then
going to say
he's
this. I don't
dying
think
with
I'm ready
Frodo.
to. Yeah, like, I don't think I'm ready to see jacked Samwise Gamgee. Like, I
Not
just,
yet.
I
Well,
can't imagine
actually,
a Hobbit with a six-pack right now. Like,
I don't know,
it's just
you
not-
know,
Have you seen 50 First Dates?
we could also yeah, I mean, you know what, Lord of the Rings, or Amazon could decide to do a sequel to Lord of the Rings, and you know, we find out that the hobbits are all into CrossFit. Anyway, hail Nemesis of Eden, thanks for checking in. She writes in that hope you're all doing well, just in for a few minutes on my break. Well, glad you decided to spend your break with us. As always, no, we do appreciate the support that we get from our fans.
And remember, popping in on your break to see us does prove you are a cultured and reasonable individual. So, way to go.
I concur. Clearly, we're saying something right to have you spend valuable break time with us. I mean, not even just break time.
Well,
Arende
we're
spends his whole day here,
relaxing.
his whole evening here, which is what we want. We want this place to be your pop culture lounge where we hang out and discuss, and we try to include you in the conversation as best as we can. Not looking forward to the day when we have 8 gajillion live viewers and we have to just randomly pick chats. But hey, you know what? The rate we're going, that's not something we have to worry about for a while, thankfully. No,
But
I think you bring up some interesting points to back up the transcendence of the Ring of Power. I think that is a decent argument overall, but like I said, I think there's still other factors at play. I mean, yes, Sam was lugging all that gear, but let's also realize he was walking with all the gear. There's only a couple of instances where he's actually running with it. So to condition to carry Frodo up the mountain,
He climbed to Shelob. That was like that was like the Empire State Building, but rocks. Like, that was Mission Impossible 2, Tom Cruise scaling that vertical cliff. There were many points. Dude, he went down his elven rope with all that gear.
Yeah. Nemesis of Eden says, correction, although I can understand the hair throwing you off. Also follows up, it is, I really enjoy the Ryder Brothers content, plus your chat game is amazing. Well, thank you, I appreciate that. And yes, the hair in your profile pic really did throw me off, so I'm sorry about that. But thanks for the correcting and not making a big deal out of it. Yeah. No, we got the best fans so far.
yeah, I tend to think we have the best fan community in existence.
Yeah.
And you know, the best thing, you know, and the great thing is too, when people show up, they actually become better people by hanging out with us. So,
you know, I'm not going to go that far yet. But we are trying. We are trying to help make things a better place. Nemesis says, no worries, PD. Thank you. I do appreciate it. Is Lord of the Rings timeless? Yes. But that's also what I love about the use of the CG is, like I said, it gives the film some wrinkles, but it's also like a piece of its time. I mean, in 20 years, people will still look back on this movie and go, wow, because of how well the rest of it just holds up perfectly. And yet it'll have that constant callback to the best CG of its era. And so I think that's really cool.
That's where I bring up, and that's why I brought it up at the beginning, is like, there's an escalation of CG. This movie got progressively better. The trilogy gets progressively better in the CG. So rewatching it is like a walk through time in and of itself. Just like you said, it does set your mark. Your CG tells you where you were at that time. And this series is one of those ones that maintained the through line, the end goal, despite crowd hype, despite, bringing in your think tanks, bringing in your focus groups and finding out what the crowds love. All of it, they went through it. They did that. Like, that was the height of that culture as it, continued to escalate. And yet the only thing that you see is a scale of progression in CG, a scale of progression in the total size of Middle Earth. But you don't see this aggressive change and shift with 2006, 2012,
Yeah. And we'll,
Yeah,
of course...
I would actually argue that this movie has one thing in common with the... Do you remember the really old version of Journey to the Center of the Earth? I mean, the claymation is obvious and cheesy as hell, but because of the plot, it's still timeless, and you sit there and you're willing to let the cheesy claymation go because you're so wrapped up in the story.
Nemesis of Eden writes in, I'm back to the Gulag. Stay amazing, you wise and beautiful people. Well, you as well, and don't work too hard. I'm looking forward to the continuing discussion next week with my personal favorite, The Two Towers, and then, of course, when we conclude, sadly, closer to the end of the month, and then, of course, the week after that, we have our Christmas Cringe special, which I'm looking forward to. But, anyway, if you follow this show, you know that how we treat death is just as important as how we treat life. And unfortunately, some news was brought to us, and I mean, for me, this is quite the kick in the balls. Kirstie Alley, most known to me anyway, playing Lieutenant Saavik in Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, passed away due to a quick onset, and, well, they said it was a battle with cancer. I would kind of equate it to more of a slaughter with how quickly that went. I've seen people battle cancer. She kind of got on the upside, though, having lost someone to cancer myself, I can say that it's a little easier when it's quick, because then there's not a whole lot of time to have to worry about grieving and thinking about things that you just can't prepare for until. And this is the one thing I want to bring up when I do these memorials, guys, is if you are somebody who has a loved one or is going through that, make every moment that you can count, because you're not going to get another moment like that. We get this life, whether you believe there's an afterlife or not. This existence, as we perceive it and experience it, is one time. Even if there's do-overs, reincarnation, doesn't matter. I like to equate this life existence to watching your favorite movie for the first time. Those feelings that you had, those moments, those twists, those turns that you experienced, you'll never experience that again. You'll experience the nostalgia. You'll re-feel kind of those feelings on rewatches of your favorite movies, but you're never going to have that first viewing experience ever again, unless you have amnesia. But then, arguably, that's come on. The point is, this life is precious, and regardless of how you might feel about someone's personal opinions on things, hers was just as much, her life mattered just as much as the rest of us. And I've heard nothing but good things about Kirstie Alley. And let's see, Arende writes in, says, my mom had brain cancer for 3 years. That was unpleasant. Any other organ doesn't affect in the same way. Yeah, John and I's mother, melanoma, that she battled on and off for 4 years. And honestly, my biggest regret in all of that was all the time wasted that I spent trying to prepare myself for something that you cannot prepare for. There's no preparation for when someone's gone. When someone dies, it's a new life. It's a new reality. Yeah.
Well, I would say, unfortunately, there is one preparation, but it's one of the most simple ones we learn as children, and that is being left alone. And as much as that feeling sucked when you were a child and you felt like you couldn't contact or couldn't reach the person you loved, well, that's now permanent.
Yeah.
It's never it's never gonna be better than that. It's never gonna be good enough. It's never gonna be good. I always tell people, you're not gonna get over it or through it. You're gonna get different.
Yeah, that's pretty much a very...
You're now operating with a negative in your life. There's a -1. One person you wanted to see you, reach out to, someone you wanted to reach out to or be able to reach to, is now -1. They're never there, and they were there. So they're not 0 because 0 means that you didn't know that they were there. They're -1 because you can't.
Well, and the
You
thing
remember their existence.
Right, and the thing I've learned about all of this through all these different losses, whether they were personal ones to me or whether this is you know, that pain you feel is actually a good thing, because that's your proof of how real your relationship was. That person made such an impact in your life that it causes you to feel a way that makes you anguish for a moment, because yeah, they're gone for this existence, they're gone forever, but they obviously meant something, and that connection, that love that you felt was there. It was real. And you know, yeah, I really am sad that you know, she passed away, because I mean, for me personally, my finish line goal is 80, and then everything else is bonus years for me. And so she unfortunately died at 71, and from what I could tell, and aged very gracefully compared to a lot of others. I mean, she probably could have shown up in a couple more movies. And so that's also what's sad, is we won't get to see that now. But I think I've said enough on the matter, so Corione, why don't you go ahead?
To me, the reason why we feel pain when we lose somebody is because if we didn't value them, we wouldn't care. But because we care, that's why it hurts. And honestly, that's what I feel with when it comes to Kirstie Alley, because look, I mean, we all, you know, I watched her initially in Cheers because that's what my family had on. And, you know, you realize that, like, some of these people are fantastic actors and actresses. And then you get to know them, and sometimes you're really disappointed in what kind of human being they are. That wasn't the case with Kirstie Alley. I mean, her and I had wildly different viewpoints on things, but she would discuss them in a respectful way. She's kind of almost the patron saint of restoring respect in the discourse.
Well, go figure I find out about this now. It's Kevin Conroy all over again. I mean, yeah, well, find out how great they are and all the good stuff they did. Oh, why do I have to find out about this when they die?
I don't think you actually did find out about it when they die. I think this is a testament to you being a great judge of character from afar. Like your favorites that you keep losing keep turning out to be people worth having favorites.
But it sounds like, Corione, you actually had some interactions?
I did. I actually ran into her when she was filming some stuff in Toronto. It's what happens when you're a nerdy guy who hangs out in bars and realizes, wait a minute, that's Kirstie Alley. I'm going to go say hi, right? And yeah, she's just a super pleasant individual. Like I said, she had some different views on some of the stuff that I have, but she was able to discuss them in a respectful manner. And that's always like a huge deal, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, she even had the attitude of, look, you can disagree with me, but have your facts ready to go when you're going to step into the verbal ring with me. And I absolutely respect the heck out of that. That is the attitude of somebody who gets it. And that is how I think, you know, we all should try to live up to, right? And let's, you know, I mean, look, did she go through kind of a dark section of her life? Yeah, she had a cocaine problem, and it took her a lot of work to get over it. But you know what? She did get over it. And that takes a hell of a lot of willpower.
Anybody who ever has a cocaine problem.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's drugs. They're hard to deal with. Yep. Like, I've never heard
Wait. Hard drugs are hard?
I was just vibing on drugs. Exactly.
Well, what I was saying, though, is, like, it takes a tremendous amount of willpower. An absolutely tremendous amount of willpower.
Absolutely.
To dig yourself out of that hole, even with help. So anybody, as far as I'm concerned, who can do that is in that, like, top tier of, like, iron-willed individuals. So, I mean,
Yeah.
that's another reason why to love on her. And I mean, beyond the obvious of, look, she's just straight up gorgeous, right? And she always has been. Even when she went through her like big actress, shall we say, phase.
Wait,
she was
struggle.
still- Yeah,
Because
okay.
even that's another thing that she managed to overcome, even in just recent years, was when she dropped. I mean, the picture that I have all the way on the left of the frame there, that's
Yep.
like that was taken like right after she had managed to lose 50 pounds over. I think it was I forgot how long it took, but it was even that. And I mean, to be at that stage in life and still dedicated to taking care of yourself to that point, I mean, that's just awesome. That's how I'm trying to be now, so I don't have to later. So even I understand that, yeah, the cocaine overcome, yeah, that's hard. Because especially if you have that addictive personality, like, I agree, Corion, the people who, as long as they didn't kill anyone while you were on drugs, absolutely. I'll put a medal around your neck for that. And then on top of that, she tried to stay healthy even later. And I get it. I try to just stick to water and eating one meal a day, and that's hard at times. But
well, I think that's a testament to, like you said, hard drugs are hard, and food is in and of itself like a necessary drug. Like some of it tastes better than others.
The best of it's the most addicting.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Like whether it's sugar, sweets, like your favorite drinks, like any of that stuff, it gets to you and it fights you. And I think that like the goal in life is not to be perfect, it's to be good enough to say I tried today. Yeah. I put myself better, and that I think is like why especially drugs like cocaine and a lot of them are like they feel good enough. They feel like, well, I earned enough to get my drugs, so I'm good enough. And that's why that fight's so hard, is because like technically you're right, but like maybe you should start holding yourself to a higher standard than drugs are good enough. and obviously this woman is somebody who is able to do that, and she's proof that it's not easy. So if you think you're struggling with it, so is everyone else.
Part of the
that's
part of the journey.
The good enough struggle. But that's what I mean by good enough, is like if you think you're struggling, then that means you're doing it right. You're pushing yourself to be better. You know what higher looks like, and you're just not there today, and that's okay. Try again tomorrow.
That's it. And you know, she put in her time. She did a hell of a lot of work on herself, and being a working actress in Hollywood is not an easy gig at all. But she always managed to find work when she needed it or wanted it. She's one of those rare people that can do comedy really well and drama really well. She was a fantastic lady, and we are diminished by her loss. And, you know, but what I hope is for anybody watching is take a look at her life, take a look at all the stuff she dealt with and overcame, and let it inspire you to do the same, right? Let her legacy be the monument that while your goal may be perfection, the most important part of it is at least progression towards the goal. You don't actually have to reach it, but you do have to try every day to go, you know what? I'm going to try to progress to that goal. And I think that's what she epitomizes, and that's why I think, you know, guys, consider her a role model. Give it a try.
Yeah, no. Well said, Corion, and go ahead.
A modern day role model. Like, so much of life seems to be looking back at Hercules and the ancients for ideals of goodness, but like somebody surviving the hardest parts of life to be taken by the one thing that's uncontrollable. Like cancer is, well, it's cancer on this world, and that's what got her. All these other struggles she suffered, she survived, she pushed through, she tried again tomorrow. And the thing that she couldn't beat was the thing that very few people can beat. So like, darn. And as much as the loss hurts, I'm not trying to lower that, but what I mean is as a hero goes, like that's a hero's death in modern society, because we don't want our heroes being killers anymore.
Yeah, no.
We want our heroes being noble members of society, and then she died a noble death because the thing that killed her was life, cancer. A manifestation or a mutation of life. And if that's the one thing that gets you, like, that means you did pretty much everything good enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when I say how we treat death is just as important as how we treat life, like, I mean to take that to task 100% literally. Like, of course we're going to make jokes, and we're going to have fun, and we're going to still laugh, and we're going to cry, and we're going to be sad, and we're going to be, because that's what the phrase means. And of course, some people don't agree, and that's fine. I get it. My brand of existence isn't for everyone, and that's fine. But anyway, we like to go ahead.
That's why we host a show where those that agree are welcome to
exactly.
join us and
We're
hang
still
out with us
finding
and
our
hear
audience.
Our thoughts on the things we think are fun.
Those awesome people
we're not
like
talking about suffering all day, every day.
Yeah, those awesome people like Nemesis of Eden, Arende, Galinda, and Skogli Jotun, who all popped in.
Orville
Thank you all.
Nation.
Orville Nation.
Even Orville Nation showed up and said hi.
Yeah, absolutely. Maria with Tina Tully, wherever you're at, we miss you. We hope to have you on the show someday.
You.
And we hope you're feeling better too.
Yeah, no shit. Oh, nice try, bot. Not today. Anyway,
sorry guys, no hot girl pics for you. We deleted them.
I'd use
God, 3 in a row, man. They are really just playing games.
Hey, you're doing great. We need the bots. Anyway, we want to thank everybody, especially our podcast listeners and all of our fans and everybody. You guys are helping to make this show more than what it is, and we do love talking about this, not just amongst ourselves, but also watching along with you guys. And hopefully we can get some better scheduling done soon.
And we'd love hosting these watch-alongs. So if you guys have a series you want us to watch along with, please.
We'll give it a try. We gave that Halo series at least one episode, so we're not above trying. Just know that if it goes over like the Halo series for us, we'll see.
We're not going to berate you for pitching it, because everybody likes what they like. But we are going to destroy the media.
And I might send you the bill.
I'm Peter York, Ryder Brothers. We'll see you next week. This has been a presentation of the Ryder Brothers Tuesday Night Live. The Ryder Brothers, restoring respect into discourse.